Hi, I'm Quiva Loftus. I'm digital lead at Arcadis, and I bridge the work of our architecture and digital teams. As architects, we're having to change the way we work to incorporate sustainability. There's a whole opportunity for upskilling around terminology and software. It's a challenge because we're generalists, but it's really important that we have this information to hand so we can harness it in our designs. The goal for us is that everyone can engage with sustainability on their projects. We don't want this to be an expert task. For all projects to be sustainable, we need everyone to understand the implications of their design decisions. What I enjoy most about using Forma is how easy it is to use. It doesn't require lots of training to get up and running. I really enjoy the visual feedback. It's great to learn more about my design decisions as I go. It makes design support available for architects from the very start of their decision-making process, supplementing the existing skills of the architect. One example I'd point to is a project in Egypt where we used Forma to help inform our design decisions. So this is a very hot climate, and we use the wind analysis to inform our design process using passive design strategies. For this particular project team, they were able to get that feedback instantly rather than having to wait for the feedback. So they were able to iterate on the design in real time. Our sustainability consultants have really embraced Forma. They're delighted that they can empower our project teams to run their own initial analysis, which means they come to the table more informed for more detailed discussion and analysis.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this What's New in Forma webinar.
Hi everyone. And we thought, what if not a customer, a power user speaking would be the best addition to the waiting room, because we are obviously going to be talking a lot, but it's great to hear from our customers about how Forma adds value for them. So it's always inspiring, and I think gets us in the right mood before we start sharing our product updates.
Absolutely. And thank you all for joining us here today. My name is Jesper. I'm an architect at Autodesk, and with me I've got Daria.
I'm Daria. I'm a content strategist on the Forma product team, and I think it's become a good tradition to join this quarterly product webinars, and I'm happy to represent the Forma product team and share all the latest and greatest that we have released in the last 3 months.
So let's get into it. What's new in Autodesk Forma April? So this covers updates between January and April, and we're already missing some big ones, but a deck has to be made at some point.
Well, we have to be strict about it and cap it at a certain time frame, or else we'll have an infinite list of updates that we would like to talk about.
That's the truth. So before we get into it, some logistics. If you're joining through your computer's audio and happen to experience lag or issues, you can try to refresh your browser or use a new browser. You can also dial in using your phone by clicking on the audio settings in case you're driving from work or to work, depending on where you're at.
Perfect commute content.
Right? If you have questions, please send them in the Q&A section. We have a bunch of Autodesk colleagues hanging out there, people that are architects, urban planners, there's technical marketing, there's different people. So whatever your question may be, there's going to be some good answers for you there.
Yeah, so shout out to Ben, Katarina, Cesar, and Arne, because there is a good chance that they might know something that we don't.
Yeah, we tend to gloss over the details, right?
Right.
And lastly, this webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a recording via email, so feel free to share the recording or the webinar on demand with your colleagues after the call.
Yeah, and if you missed any of our previous webinars and you feel you're not entirely up to date with what was new in Forma before, you can also find the recordings in the same resource that we're going to share with you later.
All right, so let's get into the key themes for this period.
Right. So we're trying to always find the common themes that would the most of the updates would fall under. And the first one that I would like to highlight is us doubling down on the sustainability focus. And we released a technology preview of embodied carbon analysis, which I think was a very highly anticipated feature. And we'll talk quite a bit about it, so stay on the line. Yeah. But continuously, we also invested in improving our other analysis of the entire suite. So particularly focusing on trust and transparency of the analysis, helping you interpret the results and not get lost with all that amazing data that might be overwhelming at times. When it comes to the creator side of things. We've integrated more of the 3D sketch capabilities into the main design mode, and we'll highlight a couple of interesting things. We've added some small but incredibly important companions to design tooling, and that is labels and measurement tools, which we'll of course cover as well. Something that is close to my heart because it originates from the product team that I'm part of is easier access for collaborators in case you would like to invite them into your project. And last but not least, something that I think will make our developer community super happy is that we added a bunch of new APIs and we've opened up our design system so that you can build your own extensions to complement Forma.
And we're already getting dividends on opening up APIs, and we'll talk about some extensions that's come out recently that I think you're all going to be really excited about, even if you're not in the target market for it. So it's been a year, more or less.
Think about it. I think it's just a couple of weeks until Forma's first anniversary, May 8th. It's incredible, and I think it's so interesting to see how the product has evolved since then, and so many updates. So this time it's 33 updates to add to the list of improvements.
Yeah, and that's putting us as a total closer to 200. So that is, you know, a lot has happened. And I remember this time last year, we were, I don't know, working day and night trying to get this thing shipped, and everybody was so stressed. Usually everybody's so cheery in the office. We're finally getting into the flow of things, it feels like. I've been talking to you devs around the office, and it seems people are kind of like done putting out fires and lifting their heights to the horizon. And I feel like some of these updates really reflect sort of a longer term vision approach.
That's great to hear your perspective, because I think I got an impression that the updates are becoming a little bit larger, so it might be a little bit fewer compared to last time, because I think in the first webinar of this series it was 48 or something, and we barely made it to squeeze it into 45 minutes. So I think today we'll have a little bit more space, even though there is a lot we want to say about some of the top highlights. But again, larger themes, and gonna show you all the most exciting parts about them.
Absolutely. So let's talk embodied carbon first.
I think stats add a good perspective to it to start this conversation, but the built environment is responsible for over 40% of annual global carbon emissions. And I think it's impossible to look away from this. And what's happening now is that we see that many architect firms are starting to build their own solutions so that they can get those data insights and preempt risks early enough. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to bring this data directly into Forma so that you don't have to bring models back and forth and bring data back and forth, because it's no fun and it's pretty much time consuming. So we collaborated with EHDD to bring a technology preview of embodied carbon analysis hot off the press.
And I think this is a really cool tool, because to me, Forma is kind of the bring the expert tools to the general user solution. Me personally, having a high interest in this, but still, I'm not BREEAM certified. I'm not a part of a sustainability sort of specialized team in an office. This is sort of the tool for everyone to get started and get involved and start thinking about this. So I've been playing with this for a couple of weeks now, made a couple of videos. We're going to run a large webinar on this together with the total carbon solution that's connected to the new Revit Insight that released today.
Exciting.
And it's really excited to see where this goes and how it develops. I think the power you bring when you can start looking at stuff like this early is game changing.
This is fantastic, and I think this is the release that our entire product organization has been really looking forward to. And I think we already see our customers putting it to good use. Have you analyzed your house yet?
Not my house, but I've done a bunch of projects.
Is there anything interesting you want to share? You're very good at finding some workarounds or additional use cases for
no additional use cases, but I did have a bunch of my biases crushed immediately once I started playing with it.
Interesting.
Because I'm one of those, like, if you just intuitively think about sort of modern construction, you're like, okay, the devil here is steel and concrete. That is our biggest problem. And it does account for a lot of embodied carbon. But what's really interesting to me is to see that the design decisions we make in our interior outfittings as architects and in our facades is actually really, really impactful. And there's a lot of stuff that you alone as an architect can sort of influence the embodied carbon potential we have downstream. So yeah, it's killing my biases, and that is a good thing.
All right. I don't want to reduce the enthusiasm, but I just want to quickly comment on some limitations. So currently, you can run the embodied carbon analysis on basic buildings that are originating from Forma's own modeling tools. Well, I think it's still a good start. What do you think as an architect?
I think it's a very good start. I think there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen in that space, and I think starting to tackle it is, as long as it's just a start, I think this is super exciting. And I can see it's exciting for people that are joining here as well. There are some raised hands, there's some chats, there's some Q&As. So please go ahead and put those questions in the Q&A and make sure you follow the deep dive tech preview that we're doing. Is it May 21st or May 23rd? Anyway, you'll see the details in chat. So this webinar is all about just speed running what's new. And then hopefully some Q&As in the end, but mostly we're just going to tell you what's what, so you guys are up to speed.
And apropos what's what, I just wanted to quickly mention that if you haven't used it yet, Jesper and I specifically collaborated on the first introduction screen that explains to you that you need to add some building properties. So in very short and sweet format, you'll get up to speed with what you need to do to actually get some insights. And if you want to take a proper deep dive, there are some advanced settings. But on this note, I'll just leave it there and just go and play with it. And
on there.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about expanding 3D model capabilities. I think this is really cool, and it's really cool for a very specific reason. Do you want to tell me about this?
Yes. So in our 3D sketch sub mode, where you can use all the conceptual design tools to express your creative ideas, we have this constraints tool, but now we brought it into the main design mode, which is what we would call an MVP, minimum viable product. But I think it opens up for more of similar capabilities that can be integrated into the main design mode. So no matter from which angle you approach your model, you can take advantage of those.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, as an architect now working in sort of the software industry, understanding how software is made has, changed my perspective on many things, because it's a lot different than how you do architecture. So this idea of doing an MVP, doing the smallest possible sort of way of solving for one thing as a proof of concept and then expanding it out, it can be really annoying, to be fair. But it also means that once you've made this possible that's somewhere, you've proven that this works, that it gives value, then it can quickly scale out and become a lot of different things. So that's what I am excited about. So bringing the new 3D constraints features out of the 3D sketch sub mode and directly into Forma's main mode is one of these like MVPs that have. There's a lot more to it than what you see on the surface.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, it opens up for more improvements along the same lines in the future. And I think this might be particularly interesting for Formit folks out there who are currently trying out Forma. So check it out.
Yeah. Love that. Let's talk about the trust.
Right. As I mentioned, even though the spotlight, the embodied carbon analysis was all in the spotlight, we didn't stop investing into our other existing analysis, because we probably, with our analysis suite, we making the strongest contribution to the AEC Collection at Autodesk. And this slide outlines additions to our noise analysis. And as I mentioned in the beginning, the keyword here would be trust. So we wanted for you to easily navigate this data, and we added a possibility to filter results for example, by time of the day, because of course it can make a big difference, particularly in the cities, a huge difference with the traffic during daytime or traffic at night.
And these kind of like smaller tweaks that lets you see what kind of assumption has been made and how it's being calculated is really important, because this sort of black box or not seeing what's actually happening here is really hurtful to sort of the trust you can have in that. So being able to, both for yourself, see exactly what's happening to your geometries, but also sort of being able to prove this to other people that are questioning the assumptions you have is really, really strong. And you'll see a lot of softwares making shortcuts here,
right,
doing stuff it's probably well-intentional, but it's really important to see what's happening. And that's what I see a lot of the squads are investing in these days.
Yeah, right. Imagine you're in the middle of a presentation and you get a question about where specific data comes from. And I think being put on the spot like that, it's really helpful when you can actually have a quick answer. And apropos quick answers, in the help articles related to the introductions to analysis, we currently have quick fact sheets that give you all the main info and limitations, how analyses are calculated, what assumptions were made. It's really useful. And I think in that particular scenario, if you have to present it to someone else, because you might be hands-on with these tools and all this data on a daily basis, but like, let's say it's an important moment, you can go to those cheat sheets and pull that info from there.
And you will see a bunch of these like smaller tweaks later on in this presentation as well, right?
Yeah, I think it all falls into that topic of trust that we mentioned as the main themes of this quarter's updates.
Well, this one is neat. I used to joke that sort of going from school to architecture school meant that notes and drawings switched places. You would draw on the main canvas and then put notes on the side. And as you know, no drawings are complete without labels and measurements and notes. And so Forma has recently introduced this neat measuring tool and this nifty labeling feature, which really allows you to sort of start labeling what you have going on in your scene, and that makes it a lot more convenient to work with.
Right. Just wanted to add a little bit more flavor. So labels are just short text descriptions, and I see two use cases. For example, you can make some quick additions, some small text references for yourself, or you can prepare your model as you're going to invite someone so that when they land and they see this, so they don't get overwhelmed and confused, what is it exactly they need to look at? But you can essentially tag a building and say, oh, this needs more work because this doesn't get enough daylight access. And so it makes it all more contextual and cuts the time that they need to spend on this initial onboarding when they come into your project and understand what is it that you expect from them.
Exactly. So it's not exactly reinventing the wheel, but it's really nice to have this stuff in Forma immediately, and it's a snappy little thing. I love it.
I think it's one of those small yet super important things, and I know that we made a cut on not include updates that came out in April, but we just released an interactive whiteboard that I think takes it one step further, all about this context and when you can select what exactly your collaborators will see when they come into your project. But for now, my lips are sealed because we agreed to make a cutoff on
Yeah,
this.
no cheating. We'll cover it this summer.
Guilty.
There's a bunch of content coming out on that as well.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And since it originated from my product team, I just could not mention it.
All right, this one feels really good. So we have, hang on, easier access for collaborators.
Yes, just to recap, so you have Hub as your company's collaborative workspace where all your projects live, and then you have projects. So if you want to maintain this level of control, who sees what, you can invite folks into a specific project. And we know that many of our users requested that the invite link for a project should be extended from 7 to 30 days, and we made it happen. So for example, if you emailed it and they haven't had a chance to open that email, and it happens a bit later, you don't have to regenerate that invite link because it's valid now for 30 days.
Yeah, we of all people know that 7 days is not a lot of time.
That's true, particularly if it happens right before a long weekend or right before holiday, just to make those links last. And another update, and full disclaimer, we owe it to you, and then you'll shed some light on why. But we also made it possible to request access to a project. So let's say if someone didn't generate a link but copied the project URL from the browser address bar and send it to you, and then you land on this page where you don't have project access, then you can hit the request access button and the project admin will receive the email. And on their end, it gives them context. Who is asking access, why, access to what, why you're receiving that email. So again, having this small reminders so that it all makes sense and you understand where it's coming from and from what context.
Yeah, and it is convenient, but I'll tell you this: if you are the project owner of like the key marketing assets, like I'm getting a lot of emails from people that have manually written the URL and sent me request for access. So maybe we should make like a secret version as well.
Right. Well, that's the price of popularity. And by the way, Jesper's demo projects are amazing. So if you want to have a look at what a bit more advanced model would look like, check them out. They're on the Forma homepage.
Yeah, just don't ask for sort of a URL from me.
Don't.
Because, you know,
Yeah,
my inbox is... No, go ahead. If you can find it, I'll consider it. So last up of the big ones.
This will please the solution developers out there, but as we mentioned, we're building out this ecosystem where you can complement Forma with any custom solution. So to make life easier for those who are considering this, we released a bunch of new APIs for generators, geometries, library, a bunch of other things. I think it was a pretty long list. And in addition to that, we made our design system open. So not only you can make your extension useful, but also make sure it looks and feels like Forma.
And if you are like me and you don't really fancy becoming a software developer, as an architect, you should be excited about this, because what we are seeing now is stuff like this Navigate Outdoor Area Analysis, which is made by Symmetry. And they wanted to solve a problem in a local market. They wanted to solve the problem of outdoor area in Norway specifically, because we have a bunch of weird rules around this, and they've created a custom extension that analyzes outdoor area in Norway. And that is, as you know, Symmetry is one of Europe's largest AEC partners. And think of this, if you're not based out of Norway, think of this as the potential that your Autodesk partners, your software partners, can do to help you build the specific tailoring you need for your markets. And we couldn't do it without sort of everybody else, whether you are an enthusiast or a strategic partner to Autodesk.
Yeah, I think it might open up for some very interesting conversations. And I personally love this example because it really illustrates our vision of extensions potentially addressing some very market-specific or geographically specific requirements when you need to comply with something. And in this particular example, the daylight requirements in Norway. I think later this week, and keep an eye on in product announcements, but we are hosting a webinar specifically for those who are considering getting started with building their extension. And I don't think neither you nor I will be particularly knowledgeable in how to get started with that very technical part, but check out those resources, and I think our folks are lowering the bar how to actually get going.
And to get sort of in the nerdy side of this, so the outdoor area analysis in Norway, there's a requirement by regulation that says that you need a certain amount of quietness or lack of noise, a certain amount of terrain steepness or lack of terrain steepness really, and a certain amount of sunlit area in order for an area to be approved as a acceptable outdoor area. And the more acceptable outdoor area, the denser you can build. And in many projects, the outdoor area is the cap that defines how dense you can build. So it's a really, really strict policy. And of course, in Norway, there's not that much sun, so it kind of becomes a big deal. And what they did is they're taking core Forma capabilities. They're taking the sun hour analysis, the noise analysis, the terrain from contextual data, and then just baking it together and reinterpreting it into answering the specific question that this specific market has. And I'm sure if you think for a while, you are going to be able to find so many of those kind of things. So the Prop K shadow studies in San Francisco is an example I've been studying this week. There's a bunch of these sort of like, if I know these 4 things, if I combine them, I will know exactly what I need to do. And of course, you could manually run through it, but this is what Autodesk partners are bringing to the table for Forma, and it's getting me really excited.
It can be a massive time saver, for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on. We're moving into the more quicker, funner analysis. So you can now select the volumes in solar energy analysis. So you, instead of seeing, I mean, you can see everything and sort of get a holistic understanding of the whole site, but better now is you can actually click down and look at specifically the parts you care about.
Yeah, the solar energy analysis was the hero update in our previous webinar, but I mentioned it before, but teams don't stop investing into adding more improvements, and this is one of the examples of that.
And this is also one of those analyses that are really confirming my biases, because when I talk about solar energy in the Nordics, you're often thinking solar panels and stuff like that. And I was just visiting an architecture office in Bangkok, and they were looking at solar energy to calculate how much their HVAC would have to work and what kind of shading they would need. So depending on your market, the use of the analysis totally changes.
Yeah, that's important to highlight the different use cases here.
This is a quick one. So there's a new version of our basic buildings. You shouldn't see much of a change as a user. It feels good in the hand. That's what I can say as a designer. It's more sort of snappy and consistent, and you can quickly start to play with volumes. So love to see it.
Perfect timing, by the way, because as we mentioned, currently the embodied carbon analysis works for basic buildings, and the improvement is, I think, just released at the right moment.
And that's a limitation because it's a tech preview, right?
That's right.
So,
yeah.
cool. There's more detailed function tagging. You can now actually tag different functions on the same floor. So you can kind of have half commercial, half hotel, or whatever you want. So more detailed sort of understanding of your building from the inside out as well.
Yeah, and the floor plan sketcher has moved. Do you want to mention that?
Has it? No, it hasn't. But we've moved the parking floors into the floor plan sketcher. So if you're looking for the parking tool, you'll find it inside the floor plan sketcher now. That is the indoor parking tool. There's also a test fit extension for outdoor parking. But yeah, you'll find it in there. Works the same as it did before. Okay, let's move on to the world, huh? I found this one while I was playing with the I'm fat fingering everything today, huh? I found this when I was playing with the globe. You know how I can't stop spinning this globe. You can tilt it, and you can do a bunch of like fun stuff. Zoom out, zoom in, get flat. And I was looking for the moon. I'm looking for some real estate on the moon, but we haven't implemented neither moon nor
data
Mars.
sources.
That's my future request.
Yeah, for those who haven't seen this before, this is an interactive map that allows you to see what data providers are supported for your project location, and you can spin, click, and you get an overview in the left panel. So whether it's property boundary, terrain, or whatnot. And apropos property boundaries.
Apropos property boundaries. So the HM land registry in England and Wales has been implemented, connected. I found the product update for that internally announcement was due to England and Wales being a mess, was what they wrote. And I'm sure they meant the property boundary database, but it is kind of a mess up there.
Oops.
Moving on to the other side of the world, there's property boundaries in South Wales in Australia with the NSW land, parcel, and property.
Yeah, we should have said parcel, not property boundaries, but well.
Yeah. Their child has many names, as they say in Norwegian. Same for Victoria, you'll find the VicMap property database, and then we haven't forgotten about our New Zealanders.
Just before we wrap this up, I just wanted to comment that we try to use in product notifications quite sparingly, but when it comes to new data providers, we try to let you know about that and keep an eye on that, because not only you can add the new data into new projects, but you can go back to your existing projects, go to the library and order data model and pull that data to existing projects, so you can add a bit more context so that it gets a little bit more precise.
Speaking of a little bit more precise, our friend, our dear database OSM buildings, we managed to squeeze a little bit more out of it.
Yeah, I might be a little bit on thin ice, but I'll try to explain what happened. So first of all, OpenStreetMap is a community-driven resource, so users go in and add detailing to buildings. However, those building parts that many users add for detailing are considered as a different element. It's tagged as a building part, which really impacts how we interpret that building. So what we did is that we added some logic that if a building contains multiple parts, we don't see it as a whole anymore, but kind of narrow down to the specific parts. Again, I'm a little bit on thin ice, but point being that we hope that it will make it a little bit more precise. And keep in mind that, again, OSM is a community-driven resource, so the quality might be slightly different. But I think in this example that you selected here, it specifically illustrates that for urban areas where there is a lot more detailing added by OSM community members, it can make a difference.
And this is free data. This is a free database, which I think is just super exciting that you have access to this. Of course, you could bring your own data in as well, but if you see this purple building, for example, and compare it to the right one, you'll see a good example of sort of the higher level of detail we're able to extract from this database.
Yeah, so we're not only continuously adding new data providers, but also trying to improve the logic of how we work with data of what we already have. And by the way, if you have a tip for a data provider in your country that you think could be useful, in that map that we mentioned in the previous slides, there is a little model where you can send in your tip so that can be integrated into Forma.
Right. Moving on. So there's satellite textures in the wind analysis. That's just really convenient to sort of put things within context. Simple as that. So you can start and see the wind analysis. This is, if you recognize this one, put it in the Q&A and I'll send you a link to the project or something. I think it's a classic.
Careful. Yeah, and you could see, for example, how vegetation would impact the wind flow in the previous image with the satellite textures.
Absolutely. And then there's an arrow that indicates the wind direction. So you have this nice arrow in the top you can turn on and off just to remind yourself which way the wind is blowing in the specific streamlined simulation you're looking at. That is very convenient. And then we know this has been highly requested by some. It's one of those, if you know, you know. And that is you can import your .ewp files to replace the default wind rows. So if you have a specific database you would like to use, you can now bring that into your wind analysis and get results based on that. That is, I think it was Arne in the Q&A here that told me that the hack here is that if you would like to see just a specific part of the year, because you get EWPs that covers only, say, winter half or something, and you bring that in, then you can use that to sort of get simulations for parts of the year.
That's really interesting. And then again, I think to your point about analysis, that there is a certain level that is accessible for, let's call generalists. But then if you want to go deeper, if you're working with a custom windrows, you can make it happen and integrate that information so that you can get even more precise analysis results.
Yeah, because some studios will be like, what's a .ewp file?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I didn't know. I had no idea.
Right? And just need something that works out of the box. And then some people have people that are dedicated to this kind of stuff, and they have, you know, everything ready to go. So
yeah, that's
kind of
right.
empowering both, right?
But in this example, you use something. It didn't really.
Oh yeah, you shouldn't look at this example. This is just me showcasing that you can put a file in. It's not even the same site. Sorry about that.
Oh, we got the gist.
Now there's filtering, more filtering. So you can filter microclimate analysis by site. So you kind of get this chance to limit it to only look at what's happening on your site. Again, sort of keeping tight to the project. So it will still simulate the whole circle, but you can like filter it down so you don't have to look at all of it at once. I think it looks really good.
Yeah, it's not always that you want to analyze the entire site, but kind of zooming in on specific zones, I think can be really handy.
And the same goes for the wind analysis, of course. You can do the same sort of filtering. And that's just what covers the biggest in-product updates. Do you want to run us through some of the add-ins?
Yeah, we released an update for our Revit add-in. And as far as I remember, until a certain point, that update was optional, but at a certain point it was mandatory. So make sure you have updated. And it's a mix of some improvements and bug fixes, something that you might immediately notice in your experience, something that might be a little bit behind the scenes. For example, we changed context buildings to be created as extrusions because previously it was meshes.
That's right. And then we had an issue with Forma parking not being sent to Revit properly. That's been fixed. We added Forma building name properties to detail.
It's probably the most important here.
Yeah, for sure. And then, so the subdivisions for roads and property boundaries in Revit 2024 now identify themselves as name properties. So that depends on the data providers, but roads may or may not contain actual road name. So again, more and more information is coming into Revit or Forma here. There's support for roads and property lines as model lines, and there's added a user option to control level behavior when loading a proposal. There's been a bunch of fixes as well. Fixed case where road widths were incorrect, fixed site limit model lines to always be above terrain. Sometimes they ended under the terrain and you never found them.
Unfortunate.
There were some issues with some roads not appearing. That was fixed. There's a new variety of improvements and fixes behind the scenes, so stuff that kind of makes it easier for us to keep developing it. And then there's a Rhino update as well.
Rushing straight into the Rhino add-in update. So it's a new version where satellite images are now available for terrain.
So you can sync stuff. So if your preferred sort of modeler is Rhino these days, you can connect it to a Forma project, and you can send contextual data to Rhino and then do your modeling in Rhino and send it back. But you now have more context in Rhino. So there's vegetation, there's constraints, there's road, property boundaries are all retrieved when they're fetching from Forma.
Yeah, so all the important context that you don't want to lose on the way.
Exactly. And then, yeah, the Rhino 8 support beta just released. You know, whenever you create a Rhino add-in, they make a new version of Rhino, it seems. So good on them. There's a bunch of interface improvements, and the installation experience has been improved. There was kind of an alpha feeling for a while there. You now have the ability to bring in user buildings data from Forma. and you have a much more control over which Rhino layers are pushed and which categories and functions they have. So you'll see that in the new UI. It's actually really convenient.
Neat.
What else do we have?
Yeah, a couple more product updates that we don't have dedicated slides for, but we still wanted to mention. So currently we added a very simple export of area metrics in CSV format. Since we have 2 displayed already on the screen, house types in the house tool will now update automatically.
And the measure tool, this is something that annoyed me, is it needs to respect the plane I'm measuring in, if that's what my intent. So if I watch something in 2D, I would like for it to stay in 2D, and now it doesn't respect that. And it just feels even nicer. So I love that. It also snaps to site limits, zones, roads, rails, lines, and surfaces. It snaps to just about anything in there.
Yeah, so not only we released the tool, but we already threw in a couple of small but important improvements.
Absolutely. And if you want to use Forma as a progressive web app, you now can. And it's like, it's not a desktop client, but it feels like you get an icon to click and a dedicated window. For if you're struggling with multitasking like I do, this can help you sort of isolate down and stay focused on one thing.
And not get lost in the browser tabs.
Yeah. And then, navigating back from the compare mode lands you where you expect, which is not on a reset screen, but in where you actually came from.
Yeah, previously it was a little bit confusing because some of our users used to click on the Autodesk logo, which took them to their homepage and project overview. But now we fixed that.
And that about wraps up product updates for this quarter. There's news available at all times in the help menu, right?
That's right. So hit help in the lower right corner and then news. So we'll get this feed with screenshots outlining the key highlights, and you can open each of the articles and get a little bit more context with all the links to help resources to give you specific instructions.
I think that's everything we wanted to cover this time. Thank you all for joining us. Let's see how the Q&A is running. Like we mentioned earlier, we also released a bunch of stuff that we didn't make the cut this time. We need a couple of days to prep the deck, but you should check out the Forma board that was released last night or 2 days ago or so.
Yeah, just hot off the press.
Yeah. And it's imagining if Miro was inside of Forma, but not quite. It's kind of hard to describe.
It's really exciting because I think, again, you can look at it twofold. So first, you can use it to keep track of your own design process. So select some specific proposals, analysis results that you got at a given point in time, add some annotations, maybe some notes for your own reference, or you can pick the best highlights as you're preparing for a presentation or share it with a stakeholder, again, so they don't need to look at your model and look with different angles. Like you can select camera angles. This is what you have to look at. Look here, this is what I need your feedback on. And I think this is an important addition to enhancing Forma as a collaboration tool for architects.
Absolutely.
I just couldn't
Yeah, you could not pitch it,
keep myself contained because I'm super excited about it, and we really want to hear how you are actually going to use it, because we have some of our own assumptions and how we've been testing it in the beta phase, but really looking forward to hearing how our community uses it.
And rounding this off, my question to you this time, which is something we've been discussing a lot internally. We're running these quarterly. So every quarter there's an update. This is a chance for you to just catch up on what's happened last quarter in case you've been busy. Apparently you guys have better things to do than to stay on top of every product update. So this is a good chance for you guys to just catch up quickly. Are we running these frequent enough, or are we running them too frequently? Would you like to see a monthly update? Let us know in the forums, and we'll see if we can adjust the format. We think we're really getting into a flow here. Like,
I think so, yeah.
And I think, let's see if there's anything we should pick up immediately. If not, we're just gonna be efficient.
I think the Q&A team has been really busy.
The Q&A team.
Thanks again.
I saw there was a good question about inside versus Forma when it comes to carbon analysis, and I think that is a great question, because And this is where I'm going to nerd out. I know we're going to talk about this a lot on the deep dive on total carbon in May 21st or 23rd. I should know this because I'm one of the presenters. But carbon needs to be attacked depending on what you know about your building. So if you have a total kit of parts, you know everything about your building, then you are in like one-click LCA tally cat world, where you can just sort of like fill in your details for everything, and you get sort of this is what happened. Now, when you're designing, you don't have the luxury. So in Forma, you basically barely have an understanding of what's inside your building. You haven't decided on your facade materials. You haven't decided on anything really. So you are really like rule of thumbing it, saying like, okay, what if I have concrete? What if I use this? What if my window to wall ratio is this? What would happen? So it's directional. Now, Insight, the Carbon Insight for Revit, allows you to put up a dashboard that tracks and simulates based on what you're designing. So it's still a sort of indicative, or it's sort of like, I'm tracking these metrics, I'm doing these things, what's happening as I go.
It's more like a directional.
Yeah, but it's still like part of the design process. Like we're very early, and still you're making machine learning assumptions while you're doing this. So what you could say is like, it's first you do this and then you do that. But if you are now sitting in Revit and you are considering like, I need to start thinking about embodied carbon, then Insight is for you. If you are starting a new project today, you have your site, then maybe embodied carbon Forma is where you should be starting.
Good summary.
All right. Well, on that note, we are gonna say thank you for your attention, I think. And we'll see you next time, if not before.
Thanks so much for joining, and thanks for all the great interaction in the Q&A.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.